Okay, Brent, we're live. Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream, February 19th, 2021. We're back with Logiq, LGIQ. We're going to have Brent's son. He's going to give us the update what's happened. We haven't seen Brent in a while, but first, for anybody that's new to our program, our goal is to bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. Companies going after massive multi-billion-dollar opportunities. They're at a key inflection point, and there are multiple catalysts in place to unleash that value. Just in the last month already, well, in the last 18 months, we've already had four companies that are up between 1,300 and 2,000%, and a whole bunch this month that are up 800. Things are going crazy right now. So
That's great.
What we're going to find out is if Logiq is going to be that next 10 or 100x, 10 bag or more. The stock started off at 350 when we introduced it in July. Hit a high of 14. Recently, it's pulled back to 7 and change. Brent, we got to find out if this could be our next, $70 stock, or at least 35. That would make it an official 10 bagger from the debut.
Sure.
So that's it, Brent. We haven't seen you in a long time. You've been busy.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. And I know you're doing this. I think the key thing is that you got this IPO happening right now. You're going to be trading on the NEO market in Canada. So I think the bankers you kind of had to, I guess keep quiet. There's a quiet period. So you haven't been able to talk too much in the last month.
That's true. We've been pretty limited in terms of actual press releases that we're able to put out. Once we get closer to the IPO, we'll be able to start going out with news that is very possibly backlogged up until this point. So I think it should give our viewers and shareholders a lot more in terms of updates and seeing where we are and how things have progressed.
Okay, so this is actually good to hear that there's a backlog of news. That's actually this is the first time hearing this. So which is, I guess, the point of having these live streams, to get the new information. So
Sure.
There's a backlog of news. Once the stock is on NEO, once the IPO is done, there's going to be a news flow.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm assuming it's going to be good news. Let's talk about the IPO here. So I know there's you can only say limited things, but just give us an update. This is Mackey Research is the banker in Canada,
That's
right?
Correct. That's correct. Yes. I'll talk about a combination of things, the process itself, and then where we are in the process, so our viewers will better understand. I would like to preface this with, it is an IPO, an initial public offering, because we have not offered shares to the public in Canada, and so it is by all intents and purposes an IPO. So the process itself, Jack, is such that the company files a preliminary prospectus, which we did on January 27th. The regulators, the OSC, or Ontario Securities Commission, have 10 business days to comment, which they did last week. So we worked through those responses, and they should be submitted now. They'll have another 10 business days to comment again. The process goes until they exhaust their comments, and then our investment banker, Mackey Research Capital, will move towards pricing in the IPO. If you look at the process there, it's the exact same as here in the U.S. And I would note that the NEO, the exchange, which is a tier 1 global exchange, defers to the regulators for clearance because we are already quantitatively qualified by a factor of 3 to 6x on all their minimum qualifications.
Okay, and I think before we talk about one of the reasons why you're going on NEO is really, two reasons. One is to reach the Canadian market, which is a great market, I think, for Logiq, but also two is like from NEO it's an easier step to get back into NASDAQ or NYSE. Just because it's like there's a process you explain. If you want to just mention that?
Sure. Well, let me talk about both parts. So So why Canada? Shopify is the leading e-commerce enabler that people are familiar with, and certainly carries a very large market cap and trades at a very large multiple. But there are also smaller e-commerce companies and e-commerce enablers that have gone public in Canada. One which I'll speak about in a moment, Acuity Ads, which is very similar to one part of our business, Lightspeed, and a number of others that are similar sized that access the Canadian market, mostly because Canada as an investor base has always been a little more receptive to businesses that are outside of North America. And so you see a lot of earlier stage companies doing their IPOs there, and the investor audience is quite familiar with them. So it's done very well in terms of the ability for these companies to appreciate in price and value, and in turn fund their expansion and execution.
Yeah. So there's two things I think which is important is that, Logiq is actually, the float, the market, it's pretty tight. It does not take a lot to move the stock. And I think once you have the Canadian, investor, base, the market opens up, it really doesn't take a lot to move the stock to where it needs to be. And the other thing is the Canadians are, they're a little bit more, I don't know, more of an international outlook. So they understand, like, for example, a lot of your business is in Indonesia, right? So, Americans don't know where Indonesia is. Canadians are very comfortable with, global markets. They have resource companies that operate in, I don't know, everywhere in the world. They have, tech companies. So it's an interesting market. But let's, just for anybody that's new to the story, because we've got like a lot of new people here, and also people need to be reminded of what you do. So in a nutshell, Brent, can you explain, what Logiq does, sort of the business model there?
Certainly. Okay. So a very high level view, we are an e-commerce enabler. What does that mean? It means getting businesses that are offline, online. Most of them are micro and small businesses that desire to have their business online. Another component of that, which is extremely important, which we've actually gone into last year, in fact, a year ago, when we acquired Push Interactive. Push has been renamed Data Logiq. And so when you hear us talk about Data Logiq, what is that? Well, that enables companies, once they're online, to market, advertise, and get leads of people that want to buy their products. So just because you're online does not necessarily mean you're going to be selling online. You need to get in front of people. You need to market to the right target audience. And that is what we gained by acquiring Push last year. We made another acquisition in the fall of last year, Fixel AI. When we talk about artificial intelligence, it's broadly speaking, it's machine learning, but specific to what we do is it actually calculates based on data fed in where the right target audiences are for companies that are advertising and marketing online. So being able to bring that in-house was another significant step in terms of enabling e-commerce business for our existing clients. And then even medium and larger size companies that have to compete with Amazon and Walmart.com and some of the larger ones, they need these services too. So if you look at our business, it's getting micro to small businesses online for the first time, and then both enabling those businesses to sell more, and also medium and larger size customers. And if you look at our website and our presentations, you'll see some actually very large names and a number of publicly traded ones that are in the Fortune Global 1000 that use our services to better market and advertise to clients.
Okay, and you also have the fintech side of the business, in Indonesia, which is going to be massive opportunity there.
It is. If you look at the underlying companies that are in fintech and in tech in Indonesia and certainly Southeast Asia on whole, you'll see multi-billion-dollar valuations there for companies that 5 years ago were about the same size as we are. There's been one notable IPO there, SEA. It's almost $300 a share. A year ago, it was, I think it was around $25, $30 a share. So it's done substantially well. It's on the New York Stock Exchange. I heard the other day that two of the other peers there, Logiq and Tokopedia, are merging. They've engaged JP Morgan to actually put them into a SPAC. That should be about a $45 to $50 billion valuation. What does that do? Well, that brings a lot of attention to the U.S. markets for companies that trade there. Right now, you go ask 100 people, what do you know about Indonesia, fintech, tech companies in the U.S.? You'll probably have 98 to 99 of them say, well, I don't know anything about that. That is undergoing change right now as we speak. We've been operating there for 4 years. We have a fintech business. We have a last mile delivery service. We have a micro lending business. All of these are underway. We'll be able to talk more about them once we're out of our quiet period. But we're extremely excited about it in-house. And I think that once we start to talk more about it, our investors will also.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think it's important to we forgot to mention the main thing is, what are you doing in terms of revenues? Give us like the financial snapshot. So people understand that, the kind of the scale of it.
Sure. Okay, so our last report was for the third quarter of last year. We are scheduled to. I can't say when we're scheduled to, but the deadline for filing is the end of March. We have always been on time. I do not anticipate it being any different now. So I can only speak to up to Q3 of last year. But the trailing 12 months revenues were 41 million. One thing
US dollars.
Correct. Yes, 41 million US. That's right. One thing that we have stated both on the conference calls and through press releases is that although the focus historically has been growing the top line, what we're doing right now in going forward is also focusing on margin improvement. If you look at gross margins for companies that are in e-commerce enablement, you want to see at least 20 to 25%, ideally in the 30s. Once you see companies with 30, 40% gross margins, you do see very large multiples obtained because it's very easy for research analysts to point to those and say, okay, as they scale up, their earnings visibility comes into play very easily.
No, it's I think this is going to be a great catalyst once the stock is trading in Canada. You have more of a it's a much, because again it's a smaller market, so you're kind of a bigger fish in that pond. You get much more attention. Institutions understand the story. I think it's going to be pretty exciting. Speaking of that, I think, Brent, it's important to kind of give investors context, a context in which they can understand kind of the valuations in the space you're in, because for some companies, for whatever reason, they're undervalued. People don't quite understand it. Just talk about some of the comps in your space.
Certainly. Okay. I would also point out, in the past, in terms of comparables, we have generally pointed to peer companies that are larger, and I do get a lot of feedback on that. There's a very understandable critique saying, oh, well, how can you say that Shopify or BigCommerce or Wix are comparables? The Trade Desk, which is an ad tech, how can you say they're comparable when you guys are much smaller? We've recently gone through the exercise of identifying some similar sized companies. In what we've found, which is also very interesting and I think quite compelling, is that once you attain exchange listing and you have research coverage and you've got the ability to create more market awareness and you are trading on a global exchange, the opportunity for investors to close that or narrow that gap in terms of valuation between smaller companies and larger ones is very doable. So I'd like to talk about three right now. One of them, since we are way beyond the confidentiality exercise, it's a company named Kubient, headquartered here in New York. Ticker symbol is KBNT. We almost merged with them last year in July, so we were in extensive discussions with them. They did their IPO in August. They did not have the ability to wait to complete the merger because their financials were going to go stale if they didn't make the timeline. They did their IPO. They went out at $4 a share. Currently, they're trading $12.50 a share. So 7 months out. They raised $10 million on their IPO. They raised another $20 million in November on a secondary offering. I think they did that at $6 a share. Again, they're at $12.50 a share. They've got a $140 million market cap right now. They're trading at 70 times trailing 12 months revenues. 70 times trailing 12 months revenues. So
so Logiq, what's the market cap of Logiq is what? Like how many shares out do you have right now?
About 15 million. So our market cap's about 130 million.
Okay.
Trailing 12 months revenues as of September were about 41, 42 million. So we're at 3x.
3x revenues. Okay. So 3x revenues, and you have peers. I mean, look, I actually do think it's a fair comparison to put you in with, let's say, Shopify, Trade Desk, anybody in that, because the comps are the comps. I mean, it's like, that's kind of the reality. And these guys are trading at way beyond 10x, right? It's like
yes, that's true. And if you look at the difference between then and now, I mean, when we were in talks with them, they were privately held. They had only raised funding from angel investors and one VC. Now being on a senior exchange, they have access to more capital to continue to grow. That does not hinder investors by saying, "Oh, and we're getting diluted because they raised money." What that is, that's enabling. It enables them to continue to execute on their business model. And the analysts and the investors that are familiar with them have clearly taken notice. And you look at where their stock's gone, $2 to $12.50 in the course of 2 months. I think that's quite evident of an investor appetite into ad tech. Okay, so I would point out that Kubient is in ad tech. Our Data Logiq division is in ad tech. So the platform that we've built out, and if you look at the management team that we've grown on that end, these are all ad tech executives that have built Yahoo's ad tech business, Magnite's ad tech business. Magnite, another example, a year ago, it was $4 a share. It hit 64 last week. And Magnite is in ad tech. Data Logiq, our division, is in ad tech. We've made 2 acquisitions in the space. We've also publicly stated that we're looking for more additional tuck-in acquisitions on the IP side. And once you get to a global exchange, investors and analysts start to look at that and say, okay, wow, so evaluations in their space are here and they're down here. How do you narrow that?
You're also, so let's talk about some of the other comps. You have, what is it? Acuity Ads?
Yes, that's a great one, Jack. Acuity's listed in Canada. They went public there first, and then they cross-listed here in the U.S. They are also in ad tech and do e-commerce enablement. If you look back a year ago, they were roughly 75 cents a share. Right now, they are $25 a share. So they've had a huge run. They're trading at about 16 times revenues, and their revenues are roughly the same size we are. So I think that's another great comparable. And then I would also point out another one, although, well, actually quite a bit smaller, a company named Sonasoft, SSFT. Their primary business is in e-commerce, and they also have AI-based solutions that are centered around business processes and e-commerce marketing. When we acquired Fixel AI last year, and you look at Fixel's business and you look at Sonasoft's AI business, we're actually a little bit larger than they are in terms of our AI business, if you break it out by revenue. But if you look at Sonasoft, they're trading at a market cap of about 160 million. Their e-commerce business did about 10 million in trailing 12 months revenues. So they're at 16 and a half times revenues right now. So I think that's another worthwhile comparable to look at. So Kubient, Acuity, Sonasoft, those are not multi-billion-dollar companies in terms of revenues. Yeah. They're getting there in terms of the market cap.
Yeah, based on the comps, I'm actually very surprised, that Logiq is not trading at 10x revenues at least, which would be 400 million divided by the stock should be right now $30-$40. Again, we've seen. I know you can't comment because there's the IPO period, etc. right now. But look, we've seen. I think some of the people on our channel have seen the. There's been some independent research or analysts on Seeking Alpha. I always mention Chris. I don't know who pronounces his last name. It's LaCourse, and he's been very bullish. I think he's had a $40 target on Logiq for quite a while, and he really breaks down the whole value proposition. Let's jump into some audience questions. We only have a couple of minutes here, so
Sure.
let's see if we can get some questions answered. Jayant is asking tentative date for the NEO listing.
Okay, so thanks for the question, Jayant. Again, the process is centered around the regulators completing their comments. Once you get through those, then you go effective, and the investment bank moves towards pricing. Marketing, pricing, and then the actual IPO. How long does that take? They have 10 business days at the regulatory agency to send comments, and once they're exhausted, then you're effective. So if you look at it in terms of timing, where does that put us? I can't say specifically, but possibly in March.
Okay, so it's coming up, and also to break down, what's the how much are you raising? Like, what's going to be the? Can you talk about that?
We can't. We filed what's called a bulleted prospectus. So once we get to a certain point in terms of comments from the OSC, Mackie starts to look at pricing.
Okay. Okay. So Jayant is asking one more question here. How many customers do you have on the platform, and what's the geographic diversity? Yeah, that's a great question.
Sure. Okay. So we've got
multiple platforms actually. So there's
we do. Sure. I think Jayant's probably asking about the platform that we launched with back in 2015. We marketed it under the brand of Create App, and then our white label partners and resellers sold it under their brands. Globally, in terms of micro to small businesses, there are over 300,000 micro businesses around the world that are on the platform. The geographic diversity spans from parts of the EU, so France, Germany, Spain, Switzerland, a bit in Italy, and a little bit in Germany. In terms of Asia, South Korea, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and also a bit in Thailand and Vietnam.
Okay, Kevin's asking, I guess he's asking what kind of news is allowed or not allowed until the NEO, until you start trading on NEO?
We're able to file 8Ks, and we'll be filing our 10K when it's due. In terms of actual press releases, those will go through our underwriters council. What companies need to be sensitive of when they're publicly traded already, and again, we're in the OTCQX market, they need to be sensitive of what's called being deemed to be in pre-marketing or seasoning the market. You don't want to be in that position because releasing certain things that may influence the market could have a negative effect in terms of the regulators' acceptance of it.
Okay. Okay. So what? Let's see here. Paul's. I don't know if you can answer. When is the next 10K due, and what do you anticipate, positive or negative? He's not asking for the number, but it's going to be up for. Can you answer that question? I don't even know if you can answer that.
The filing deadline for the 10K is March 30th. We have not been late on filings. In terms of talking about positive or negative, I can't comment about that. But what I would say is what we have publicly disclosed before, and I indicated earlier on the live stream. Our focus has been around the improvement of gross margins.
Okay, so I mean, basically, like right now, kind of one of the reasons why we haven't seen you in about a month is your hands are kind of tied on how much you can talk about or whatever. So numbers, things like that, is kind of like off. It's it's off the table until the NEO deal. Let's see here. Great question. Paul's asking, This is the question we're all trying to figure out. What is the difference between Logiq and these other companies that have such higher valuation multiples? Why is there such a big disparity?
That's a good question. I mean, I could sit here and talk about it for an hour, but I won't. If you look at the historical peer group that we've looked at in terms of comps, most of them are larger companies. So if you look at Shopify, you look at Wix, BigCommerce, they're all exchange listed. I think that makes a tremendous difference. Being on a tier one global exchange really is night and day. Research coverage makes a big difference. Being able to undergo IR and market awareness that resonates with people who can actually buy because you're traded on an exchange. That's one. Secondly, margins. Historically and currently, why are we working on improving margins? Historical margins have been okay. I think what you're seeing now is a move towards margins that are more similar to the larger companies. And as I indicated earlier in the live stream, some of the smaller companies like Acuity and Kubient, which are both based both trading on tier one exchanges, broader market awareness, research coverage. So that makes a huge difference.
Okay, let's wrap up here. Let's see here. Any new acquisition talks at the moment? Can you talk about that? Right now with the IPO.
I could. Well, yeah. We have stated publicly that we are very active in M&A, and again, we made 2 acquisitions last year. It is in our best interest to add on a couple of key components to our platform. And should we do so, I think that being able to make a very, very strong case towards why valuations should be more similar to peers, at least on the ad tech side, is very doable. In terms of e-commerce enablers, again, we're trading at a huge disparity to our peer group, and being listed on an exchange makes a huge difference. So we'll certainly see.
Okay, and okay, so Brent, let's wrap up. I don't think I usually ask about potential news flow. You can't talk about that until the IPO. I mean, really, the reason we brought you out here is just to so people know you're alive, because you can't put out news. But investors
very much so.
This is like when they kidnap people. What is it? They do with the newspaper, proof of life, the picture of you.
Proof of life.
So people know you're alive. So so Logiq is alive and well. Hopefully, we're going to get this IPO done in the next couple of weeks, because I mean, I think frankly, look, between you and me, and is look, the stock is kind of, the bankers like to try to keep the price down so that when it comes out, their investors make money. I mean, that's the idea. Is they look like heroes. The stock goes to doubles, goes to 15, 20. Everybody looks good. So the stock is. I don't know if it's going to move too much between now and this IPO, but I think this is a good time for people to get in. I want to ask you the last question. Top 3 reasons why investors should consider Logiq today, in your opinion. In my opinion,
as I always point out, both on the live streams and just generally speaking, I think due diligence is the core component of looking at any company, not just ours. And I would encourage people to not only look at our website and our presentations and listen to our conference calls. And when you do so, look at the caliber of the management team. Typically, when you look at smaller companies, you'll find very small management teams. And in many cases, certainly in the OTC market, it's a handful of people, sometimes 1 or 2. We have a very, very senior management team that has expertise in the areas that we work in, and not at nondescript companies that are global players and have been for many years. Look at the independent board directors. independent board directors don't sign on just on a whim. There's reputational risk, there's professional risk, and you look at the ones that we've had for years, and the two that we've brought on recently, Josh Jacobs and Leah Hickman. Josh, he was former president of Ogilvy Digital, which is the third largest ad agency in the world. Why? Well, we're evolving our ad tech business, and Josh has been very instrumental in that. Leah Hickman, she is credited in Silicon Valley as having transformed Adobe software from a packaged software company to the cloud. You also look at customers. We have customers listed on our website. They range from smaller companies to Fortune Global 1000 companies that are publicly traded. Here,
the Indonesian government also. I mean, where
yes, they have the Social Security Administration as well. So due diligence, critical component. Look at open source. Look at peer companies. Look at where they operate, what they do. Look at what we do, and then look at what we've set out to do in terms of growing the business, where we are right now in terms of our IPO. And then I think, thirdly, just look at this past year in terms of what is transformed in terms of our daily lives and how we conduct business and life in general. And at the core of that, it's digital. And underlying that is e-commerce and getting in front of people through ad tech. So e-commerce enablement, ad tech, huge beneficiaries of what is now very normal for many that before COVID didn't exist. And so the capital markets have rewarded those companies in that space with big multiples, big valuations, help them fund expansion. I don't believe that would not enable us as we move towards the IPO.
Okay, Brent, on that note, I want to thank you. Hopefully we're going to have you on next time we're going to have you on is hopefully right after this IPO is done, so we can talk about all the stuff that's happening, and this is going to be hopefully you're going to be allowed to release news. So we'll see you again in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. Thank you again, Brent.
Thanks so much, Jack. Thanks everyone.